What's up guys, Blonde Asino or Toxic Hazard here, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about something that I've been getting asked a little bit, and that is about how to make a good defense team. Now, basically, I'm going to try to explain in this video the defense metas for both low and high arena. Now, the cutoff point that I'm going to have for low and high arena is if you can get into Masters 3 or higher by the end of the season, I think I would consider you to be more gearing towards the high end of the arena. And if you can't get quite into Masters yet, or even if you can't get into Masters 2, I would say is around the cutoff, then I would focus more on the low part of the arena for your defense points. Now, I am going to start with the low points of the arena because I think it is just a lot more self-explanatory, and I guess I'll get right into it. So, basically what you have to consider is that the people in the low portions of the arenas, they haven't been playing the games very long, and farming for gems takes a long time to get towards. So if we look at my monsters, for example, my monsters have a ton of resistance. Look, that has resistance, that has resistance, that has resistance. I have a resistance lead. Everything of mine, all of my gems and everything, they all have resistance pretty much. So what does that mean? It means that because my gems are so good, my monsters will resist a lot of CC. However, in lower portions of arena where the players aren't as high of levels, the CC won't be, their resistances won't be very high. So CC's abilities are highly valued there. Now, that's not to say that like water monsters or monsters like Water Sura over here aren't great in high PvP. Of course they are, because if a 2-turn stun gets off, that's still ridiculous. It just means that in low arena, CC skills such as stuns, such as, for example, Fire Shiva, Water Sura, even monsters such as like Wood Wild Fang. All of these monsters are a lot more viable in lower portions of arena because you can rely on their CC skills much more heavily than in higher portions of arena where the enemy monsters are just going to resist it. Now, basically, in this portion, in the lower arenas, you still want to be able to make sure that you have a variant lead that's probably going to be defensive. So, for example, if we have a Pebble lead that has great CC and it has a variant lead of HP, that's lovely. Now, our next step is going to be we want to probably include 1 to 2 more CC units. So, if I was going to make a team, I would say maybe a Wood Wild Fang in here, and possibly something like a Water Gene. Now, what this does is it makes sure that now that I have all the elemental bases covered as well, that any type that he sends at me that's wood, water, or fire will all get CC'd by one of these monsters because it has 60, 100, and 100 chance to CC. Now, what am I going to do next? I still have to make sure I have, number 1, some sustain, since all these monsters are tanky, and number 2, a little bit of damage still, because while these monsters do have CC, eventually the enemy monsters will resist as wood, water, and fire monsters all have a base 20 resistance, plus some stub stats from gems might come into effect as well. So what we're going to want to do is we would set up with something like, I'm going to try not to use a nat 5 such as Water Persephone, so I would say we want to use something like a probably something along the lines of like a Wood Hannah would be pretty decent, especially because it has an attack down and splits the tank with the Wood Wild Fang. Alternatively, you could use something such as a Fire Shiva, as that has a heal, a Water Nightmare if you have one, as that has a heal, or basically anything that has a healing skill. Water Persephone is probably the best monster in this case. So I'm going to actually just, I'll still stick with the Wood Hannah though, just to keep it without any nat 5s. Now, the last monster that I include in this defense is I have to have something that does a decent amount of damage. Now, what's going to do damage in this case is we still want to keep it pretty tanky. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to stick in either one of 2 things. Either a defense aggressor if we want to keep the team more geared towards sustain, or we can stick in an attacker such as a Wood Arthur or a Fire Succubus to try to surprise the enemy and deal a lot of damage while they're still trying to deal with our CC units. Now, the reason we stick an attacker or a damage unit in the hidden slot is because while their monsters are CC'd from our guys, they won't be able to hit the attacking monster. For example, if I put a fire succubus in here, my wood wild thing will already CC one of their water monsters with a petrify, so it won't be able to focus on the fire succubus. However, so basically, the meta for lower arenas is to basically just try to get a few CC stackers, maybe 2 to 3 CCs, with having a great HP or defense lead, and on top of that, you want to try to have a little bit of sustain, whether that's like with a recovery lead, a recovery unit such as Hannah, or it can be something like a wood valk or a water Persephone or something like that. That's not necessarily only have healing on their active skills as a heal. And you also want to make sure that you have a little bit of damage weaved in there. For example, something that you could do is have an attack healer such as Fire Cupid. Anyways, moving on. By the way, if you need if you need a summary of what I'm saying, I'll put it all in the description below, so you can check that out for just a TLDW, I guess. Anyways, now onto high level arena. In a high level arena, it's very important that you assume that all the enemy monsters have high resistances. That being said, when you're trying to create a defense, it's important to have many things. The first of these is you yourself have to have high resistance, or else the enemy monsters will just overrun you every single time. So for that reason, I start with my Water Nightmare lead, but since I know that everyone else doesn't have one of these, I would say that running a basic defense lead such as Wood Banshee, Wood Leo, Fire Pebble are all still very strong defenses, and I would recommend those highly as well. Secondly, I would argue that after putting in, say, we'll stick with the typical Wood Leo, pretend that mine is variant. We'll stick with a typical Wood Leo lead. Now, what's important after this is you have to have some sort of damage threat. For most people, this is an aggressor, such as a light Nike. However, you can alternatively put in something such as something such as like a wooden Valkyrie, or for example a water tiger that's sneakily put on one attack gem. For example, mine has one attack gem right here. This is because in higher levels of arena, the survivability isn't as important as the raw damages anymore. They're kind of equaled out. Whereas in lower portions of arena, it's all about survivability and just making sure the enemy units can't attack. And it's not too geared towards just doing a lot of damage. Whereas in this case, it's a mixture of both. You still need units that will have a lot of effect with their skills, such as my Water Tiger's taunt and defense down. However, you also need to make sure that your monsters do damage, which is why, for example, on my Wood Leo, I also stick on one attack gem. Now, this is also very important because while a lot of people use aggressors, it's not the only thing that you can do. We still want tanky units that do damage, for sure, but I would just like to point out that there are other options that you can do as well. Now, for the time being, I'll stick in my Water Tiger, and I'll stick in, say, Light Nike. Now, what you have to have after this is you still have to have a sustain unit. Whether this is something like a Light Hannah, or a Water Persephone, or a Wood Valkyrie, or a Fire Shiva, you have to have some sort of sustain. And if you can't find anything, then your defense is going to go down pretty quickly, in my opinion. Now, just for the sake of the video, I'm going to put in my Water Persephone. I'm going to put in my Wood Valkyrie, actually. Now, for the hidden monster, you're usually going to want to run something that has that's very dangerous. For example, in this team composition, I think I would run probably something like a Fire Succubus, just because the Wood Valkyrie and Wood Leo will be taking care of a lot of the water threats. Alternatively, you can try to run another tankier unit, such as a Fire Pebble, or maybe even an attack defense HP fired Valkyrie, or maybe even another aggressor. But basically, You want something that, again, that does a decent amount of damage and is still tanky. But I would leave your sustain unit up front. So basically, to recap for the defense meta for... Oh, shoot. I don't want to save that. But to recap for the defense meta for higher levels of PvP, I think that it's very important that you have either a resist lead in Nightmare or like Miho or something like that. And then you have to have some damage dealing threats littered throughout your whole entire team, while making sure all your monsters have high resist themselves. And on top of that, I think it's very important that you I think it's also very important that you make sure to have another damage dealing threat littered on the back line, and also have like one healer. Once again, this was just a short recap, and I hope you learned a lot. I know that my thoughts might have been a little bit scattered. This wasn't scripted whatsoever, so I was kind of just going off improv on what I saw. I will leave a format down below, so you can check the description if you were kind of lost through this video. And thanks for watching, and hope this helped you guys a lot, and make some good defenses out there. See you later.